In this country, we're really bad at talking about failure. We're so focused on the failing. I think it's quite unhealthy in that way. I think the biggest issue is how to deal with problems and how to prevent problems happening. You learn that if you say certain things, you're going to get certain reactions, whether you meant it or not. There's two things I think that really help you more in life than anything else. One is being able to look at a situation without ego. You've got to know what it is you want to say, and you've got to know why you're saying it. And if you haven't got the why or the what, then there's no point in doing the rest of it. I was given praise for not complaining about a sexual assault at a dinner in front of other people.
Welcome to the Trailblazers, the space where high-achieving women finally exhale and feel deeply understood.
We are Brittany Anderson and Disha Solanki, two leaders who have built, scaled, exited and supported multi-8 and 9-figure companies
while carrying far more than most people ever see.
Here we go where most conversations stop.
The burnout, the pressure, the ambition, the identity shifts, the invisible load, and the moments you almost quit.
This is where the real story begins.
Trailblazers.
My guest today has spent over 25 years in the rooms where the biggest decisions get made, advising firms like Deloitte, PwC, BP, and Shell on how to communicate, grow, and win. She led the Society of Women Writers and Journalists as its worldwide chairman, and she's a published author as well as a BBC broadcaster. In 2000, she founded Salt Whistle, a consultancy that now helps SMEs and international businesses punch way above their weight in marketing and business development. She's straight talking, deeply experienced, and I think you're going to get a huge amount from this conversation. Rebecca Harding, welcome to the show. You spent a long time in corporate. You worked for Anderson, BP, Shell. What made you walk away from that, and how old were you when you did walk away?
Oh, yes, now that's an interesting question. I was told not to by everybody. Like, seriously, everybody. I'd had enough of the corporate world. I just felt everything went so slowly. I mean, if you wanted to make something happen, it was really difficult to get anybody to move because, like, the wheels go so slow. It's like an oil tanker, isn't it? You can't change direction without giving it about 7 miles notice. And I just was so frustrated. I had all these ideas, all these things I wanted to do, and particularly in what I would call quite an accountancy firm. And if you think, I mean, lots of people won't even remember Anderson now because it was quite a while ago. But Anderson at the time had an incredible reputation. I mean, you walked in a room, said you were Anderson, and people almost sort of bowed to you. I'm not saying to me, but not to the brand, I think. But it
They
was,
had a very strong brand identity, though.
yeah, and as being really cutting edge. And yet the reality was it was still a big corporate. And so you were still sort of hampered by the need for sign off by about 400 people before anything kind of happened. And for me, I just felt too trapped and I had too many ideas and wanted to try things out. So I'd been having a reading for ages about businesses. And I thought, right, I'm going to give it a go. I was 30. I thought, I'll try. If I fail, I'll just go back to work somewhere else. So it doesn't matter. And I think having that attitude to failure is actually really important, that you give something a go. And I think in this country, we're really bad at talking about failure. I don't hear any of my sort of European friends talking about failure. They don't. They just say, oh, I'm going to try this. But they never talk about failing, whereas we're so focused on the failing and the blame and things in Britain. I think it's quite unhealthy in that way. And I just thought, oh, well, it might not work, which I think is a much better way to think about it. It might not work, in which case I'll go back to a different job. So I left and my parents were anti it. All my friends said I was crazy to walk out of a good job. And I have never regretted it. So there is a bit of a smugness there. Having proved my point.
It's very interesting that you left your job, and I assume it was actually, a stable job at that time, well-paying. It was a brave decision for you to go off and then say, I'm going to do something totally unknown when you've had paid employment until you were 30, right? And what led you to go, apart from the frustration of being in corporate, you also thought to yourself, I could go back to this, which is also a really brave thing because I don't know if many people would think that nowadays, especially not many women who are 30, right? That's a big leap of faith. What made you take that jump and go, you know what, I'm so done with this today?
Oh, I think I'm ambitious, and I think I've always been
Mm.
quite daring. I think I've always been one of those people that will give something a go, whatever it is. I've never been a no person, I've always been a yes person. Okay, I'll do it. Probably too much yes, actually, but I'll do it and see what happens. Yeah, it might be interesting. And I think life's so short, you've got to kind of seize it. And it's very easy to sit there in that corporate job wishing that you'd done some traveling or done a bit of this or done a bit of that. And I'd seen friends of somebody that I worked for, he literally got cancer at 42 and died within 6 months. And 42 is no age. And there I was sitting at 30, he just died. And you think, I've got to do this. I don't want to sit here for another 10 years not having tried it. So I'm going to give it a go. And actually, around children and everything, it's proved extremely good. Yeah, it set me up for the future in a way I actually didn't anticipate at the time. I didn't have the sort of insight about how demanding youngsters are.
Already have 2 children then when you went on, and was Salt Whistle where you began, or was there like, an evolution into it?
No, Salt Whistle was where I began, and Salt Whistle Bay was where I made the decision to do it finally. That was the sort of place I was sitting. It's a lovely sailing trip in the Caribbean, which, of course, once you have children, you could never afford. I went started then and just carried on, and when I had the kids, I realized I'd actually got myself into quite a good position to carry on with it during that time and be flexible around the children. So
What do you know now at 50 that you had wished you'd known at 30 when you were starting out?
everything. Literally everything. Oh, I think I've been doing this for such a long time now, and I really notice it when I've got youngsters on the team, young, younger than me. They're younger than me. They're very capable. But then they'll do something bad. I'm not saying they do anything bad, but they'll do something, and I think, no, that won't work because, and there's nothing that they do, and there's nothing that I see now that I haven't
Mhm.
been through before. And it's usually problems with clients, ways of handling difficult situations, even having the courage to get rid of, people that you're working for that you really don't like. You always end up with really fantastic clients that, you end up with being friends with for years. And there's people that I work for, years and years ago, 30 years ago, and we still, great mates now. And then there's other people that make your life so difficult for no apparent reason as clients, and actually having the guts to go, I really don't want to work for you anymore. And actually, you're upsetting my team is a really important thing to be able to do. And something that's quite hard when you're young because
Mhm.
just think you still have this idea that you've got to serve this sort of service idea. And actually, you're not, you're an equal as a consultant. And that's why they're
Mhm.
bringing you in and getting yourself into that mindset of being equal,
Yep.
and that you should be respected for your knowledge is
Mhm.
is really important, I think, at work.
I absolutely agree with you. Do you find with your team, and you mentioned that a lot of your team are younger, do you find that you're also educating them not on just business, but on communication, on how to communicate with each other, plus communicate with your team? I'm only asking because I'm finding this with my own teenagers, right? There seems to be something missing in the whole communication layer. And it's almost like they have to come back to you. I'm like, you didn't really write that email, did you? Yeah, we did. I was like, no, that needs a rewrite. The email needs a rewrite.
So I know exactly where you're coming from, and people blame the internet, they blame,
Mhm.
sort of the emoji culture. We read our kids' texts and think, I don't actually understand what that says. You have to look it up and work out what the code means. But I'm very lucky. My younger team are actually very good communicators. The one thing I have noticed is putting background. So understanding someone else's point of view, and they may not remember or they may not link facts or link bits of information and that we need to do that for them. So there's a slight assumption that people understand a bit more than often that they do. And you just always have to go back to the bottom level. What is it? Why are we doing it? And just that constant reminder and what it is we need from them. But I mean, that's really with the graduates that are just starting. And I think that's probably true for us, maybe when we were that age.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest issue is how to deal with problems and how to prevent problems happening
Mhm.
by saying things that create them, by not saying enough or saying something that makes them ask a difficult question or, it's thinking ahead about people's reactions to what you're saying. And I think that's what you learn with age, isn't it? You learn that if you say certain things, you're going to get certain reactions, whether you meant it or not. So
Yeah.
it's trying to help them deal with those sorts of things, I think.
From my perspective, I would assume that you're a very good role model for your team and
Oh,
someone say,
so nice. What
"Look
do I
at
pay? Is it a tenner this time? I mean, it's normally a tenner for you.
Now. I forgot to mention, listeners, Rebecca's also ridiculously funny.
You are being nice to me today. What have I done to deserve it?
So you've achieved a lot by anyone's measure, I would say. Do you actually feel successful?
That's such a good question because you know what I'm going to say. No, no one ever feels successful, do they? I bet you could talk to somebody running ICI and go, "Do you feel successful?" They'll sit there and go, "Deep down, I think I'm going to be found out any minute now." But we're all like it, aren't we? And I think women are terrible at not looking at what you've done, at just looking at all the gaps in what you think you should have done. And in some ways, that drives you to constantly be better. So, I look at the business and I think, oh, I still need to do this and I haven't done that. And this needs to grow and that needs to putting right. And it's that drive that makes you successful in the long term. It's that ability to constantly criticize and not be complacent. But from a sort of appreciation of yourself point of view, and I'm better now than I was when I was younger, but I think that's also the way we were brought up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we were brought up to criticize ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very easy just to focus on what you haven't done. And I think I see it a lot with women saying they can't do things. They'll go, "Oh no, I can't do that." And you think, well, you haven't actually tried yet, have you? Should we try it first and then decide if we can't do it? And interestingly, men will never say that in the workplace. They'll always go, "Yeah, I can do it. I can do it," even if they can't. And quite often, I've had guys that have come for interviews and, contractors. I remember one young contractor, he said, "Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I've done that lots, lots. Yes." And then when I tried him out, he had no idea what he was doing. And I thought, no woman would do this.
He definitely didn't
No
have
woman.
imposter syndrome. No, he did not.
And they have the advantage, and I think it is sort of a partly biological one of an ego, which I think we're programmed quite differently in that way. And I've heard psychologists say that as well. And I think it's really important that we don't articulate the fact we can't do things because one, men will believe it categorically. If you tell a guy, "I cannot do X," they will go, "Oh yeah, so Bet can't do that." And
Yeah.
it'll sit there forever,
Yeah.
even if it's not true.
Yeah.
So really important. I think it's really important never to undersell yourself in a meeting. I've seen that happen where women around the table go, "Oh, I'm just here to. I'm just here." Never say that,
Yeah.
especially in a room of men. And also for your own sort of appreciation, don't, you try stuff, give it a go. I always think if someone else can do it, you can. There's no reason why you can't. At least try. So I think success is about really being kind to yourself, actually, and not thinking about what other people judge. I think you can get dragged down that whole material wealth rabbit hole, which I think is a very unhealthy one.
I agree with you. And I think a lot of the times we're very guilty also of saying we'll feel successful when we achieve something or when we get to a point. And then that goalpost changes again because then you're like, oh, I got here. Maybe I'm not good enough or I'm not successful enough, and it'll be the next milestone. And to your point that we never just stop and appreciate how far we have come. And I ran an executive recruitment firm for a long time, and it was really interesting because most of the executive male counterparts, they can't fill, I don't know, they might have got 30% of the job description. Like, oh, I can do 30% of that. And we'd be like, oh, okay, cool story. Meanwhile, we'd send the same job description to a woman who we knew could do the job, and she'd go, I can only do 90% of the job. And we're like, that means you're great at the job.
I've
Oh,
got
no,
that.
but I can't do this point and this point. It's like, no, the guy that in the call before you, he wasn't bothered about the other points. He was only looking at the fact that his glass is 30% full, not empty, not 70% empty. And is also, and these are senior women who are at the top of their game who are still having this conversation. And I do think in the entrepreneurial world, those stories that we sell ourselves and that we were brought up with, they take a lot of detangling as we get older. And I do think a lot of it is when you get to a certain age and your hormones start leaving you and you just think, screw it, I'm just going to give it a whirl.
Yeah, I do think that helps, but it's that slight madness, no.
Yeah, it is slight madness, all for the good of yourself.
Yeah, I just think it's that the change when you get to a certain age, it really does help you not worry so much about everything and not care so much. And I think there's two things I think that really help you more in life than anything else. One is being able to look at a situation without ego.
Yeah.
And if you can take your ego out of every situation and think about where do I want to get to, not worry about your pride and whether your ego is going to take a bashing or somebody's going to think something of you in the journey to there, but
Mhm.
just concentrate on how you're going to get there. And it might be by letting someone else win on a couple of points or something, or let them. If it gets you to where you want to get to,
Mhm.
that's the most important thing. And I've totally forgotten because I'm that age what my second thing was
It's
going to
coming back
say.
to you. It'll come
It
back
will
to
come
you.
back.
And then we can stop and you can just share it. I would love that.
Yeah. So that was my first thing, and my second is departure.
Oh,
Remembering what it was you were gonna say is another really important thing.
he's like me and before. I totally agree. We've both done it now. I feel seen and heard. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
That's okay. Anytime.
I want to ask you something about identity, bearing in mind what you've just said, right? A lot of us women have our identity tied up in something, right? It's a worth thing. So it could be our jobs, our professions, money, children, any one of the above. How much of you do you feel is tied up in what you do?
Less now, more when I was younger. I think when I was younger, and particularly in the period when I was looking after small children, you kind of feel that everybody looks at you and you're covered in baked beans or spaghetti, and they'll see it. They'll see the stains and the fingerprints and the snot on your shoulder and all the stuff that happens when you've got small kids, or you can't avoid it. And somehow that sort of sucks your confidence a bit, I think, being in the house all the time. And it's
Mm.
quite hard to put the two lifestyles together, especially if you've come out of quite a corporate job where you've been dressing and looking the part, and then you're suddenly mum at home with very little company and very different people that you're mixing with. I think that's quite a different phase. And I think that can really knock your ego as a professional.
Mhm.
I remember when I came back to work afterwards, it took me a while to get my confidence back, but then I suddenly found I felt much better about myself because I had a
Mhm.
me. I wasn't just I'd become, Fleur's mum. I wasn't a person anymore. I was the mum of a person, but they sort of become a priority. So that was very important for me, for my identity, to feel that I had something that was me, really, and my business was me. It was in every sense, it was an expression of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. But as I've got older, I felt much happier in myself. And again, I think it's coming back to the not identifying as a young woman or having to perform in a certain way that's expected of me. I am just me. And to be frank, if people don't like it, on your bike. And great if I make friends, but I'm not really worried about whether people like me or not. I'm more interested in whether I want to spend time with people and whether that's valuable time for me in spending that time in that way. And I think you get much more ruthless with your time as you get older. And it's got to be good because it's got to be better than a cup of hot chocolate and my book. And that's such a change in thinking. When you're younger, you're sort of running around trying to make friends with everyone, hoping everyone likes you. And in a way, it's a real waste of energy.
How did you get through that season, having a business and two young children? I spoke to a lady earlier this week, and she's in a situation right now where she has three under fives and she's running a business. Yeah, and I know there'll be listeners who will really resonate with what you've just said. How did you get through that season of two young kids and you were the CEO, you were wearing the founder hat, you were wearing, a parent hat, you had so many hats on. What did it take for you to find you again and find that get through the season? I want to say balance, but that doesn't really exist if I'm totally transparent about that.
I think I mean, I downscaled it a bit. I had to. There was no choice. I mean, back at that time, I mean, things were quite different. There was no on meetings. I mean, this is
Yeah.
20 years ago now. It's 3 years ago. We don't like to talk about that. But yeah, there was no online stuff. It was really tough because I remember being invited down to a meeting in Guildford, which ended up being half an hour. It took me 6 hours to travel down there for a half-hour meeting. I was like, couldn't you have just talked on the phone?
Yeah.
But clients can be quite demanding that way and not really think about where you're coming or back then, they weren't thinking where you were coming from. They just had that half-hour meeting. Now I think people have really progressed in that way and understand other people's commitments a bit more. The use of online technology has been amazing. I think that really helps now in a way that it didn't. But I do think you have to take help. And I think it's very easy to sort of go, no, I don't need any help. I can cope. I am a super mother. And they do try and portray people as being super mothers. I don't agree
Oh,
with
yeah.
it. It's people that, they come back 2 minutes after a cesarean section and they're out, in the gym lifting weights and they're like, yes, I had my cesarean yesterday and I'm out here now and I've already lost the weight. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. These people have loads of help and you can always throw money at a problem. If you've got enough money, you can solve anything. But the
Yeah.
reality for most people, even people running their own businesses is that it is tough.
Yeah, it
It's not
is.
easy. And, you can't always take enough money out of the business because you're really, it's a battle,
It
particularly for the first few years. It's not an easy thing to achieve. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And it
Mhm.
takes some stamina to keep a business going over a long period of time. And so I think you just have to take the help when you've got young children and remember that it is difficult and you don't have to be perfect. And if the house isn't tidy and the ironing's not done and the kitchen floor looks like you could probably turn it into a market garden because there's so much dirt on it and just not worry about it. Because do you know what? Good immunity for the children. It's fine.
What you say, like, you gotta pick your battles, right? Which ones are the most important today and which ones don't really matter that much today? And a lot of times it's hard for high-performing women who set high standards for themselves to let things go or let things slide.
Yeah, and it's wrong to think that everybody else has got a perfect house. I remember one of the people I knew when the girls were at school, she always had a perfect house. I was like, how does she do this? She's got 2 dogs, 2 boys, just like me.
Oh
And
gosh.
and I was like, "How does she do this?" And then one day I turned up unexpectedly and her house was a tip, and I felt so good. I have never felt so good. There was washing everywhere, ironing baskets, toys all over the floor. The dogs were running around, pulling bits of paper apart, nicking toilet rolls and all the stuff that dogs do. And I just laughed my head off and I said, "You've made me feel so much better as a woman."
She tidied up for you the day before, that's what it was. And,
She
when we tidy up, you get to a point of no one touch anything and no one put anything down. I just did this. It looks amazing. Let me have 5 minutes of glory, right?
Yeah, but it's not real life, is it? It's just not.
No, totally not.
So just give yourself a break because, I was talking to a palliative care nurse the other day and she was saying that, she's never sat there with somebody at the end and said, they've said, "Oh, I really wish I'd spent more time doing housework and in the office." They just don't. It just spend time with your children and do the work and don't worry about the rest of it.
Because that's not when even I wouldn't remember that if we were totally honest with ourselves. And I think a lot of it is that we're not honest about what we would do because we don't think about the end, right? At the end, what would we say? And I agree totally. I wouldn't be saying any of the above. I would be saying spend more time with those who fill your cup up whilst trying to figure out how to keep a roof over your head at the same time and fulfill your ambition.
Yeah, and it's the balance, I think. It's having fun. You've got to have fun. If you don't
Mhm.
have fun as a mum and it becomes all work, I think you end up very miserable. And if you're miserable, the kids will be miserable, your partner will be miserable, everybody's miserable.
Yeah.
It's so important to have fun and laugh, and actually laugh at the fact that your child has just coloured in the sofa. Everybody's been there. It won't be the first time and it won't be the last in history.
Sofa's gonna go at one time. It's not lasting forever. That's the way I had to look at that one. Rebecca, what has ambition cost you?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. What has it cost me? I don't feel like it's cost me anything, but actually, I think because I am that bit older, and I'm not sure, I can't talk for women who are younger now, but definitely men. When I was looking for relationships, they struggled with a strong woman. And it was very apparent. They wanted me to pay the second fiddle to them, whatever it was they did. And
And you've
yeah.
sat in a lot of rooms where you're probably the only woman, I can
Oh,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, when I was younger, it was always me and no one else. And, behavior back then in the early 90s was not good in the city.
Mhm.
There were a lot of experiences I had, including a very, like, really being assaulted in public at a dinner. And the next day, a female boss told me that I was a good girl for not having made a fuss.
Oh,
And she praised me and she said, "Just carry on, just ignore it and forget it and move on, and well done for doing that." So I was given praise for not complaining about a sexual assault at a dinner in front of other people.
how did that make you feel? Did you take that with
Oh,
you?
at the time, I was really angry about it. I knew the reality of it. You were never gonna be
Mm.
able to do anything about it. And I'm very glad now that I really hope my girls won't, in their careers, will not have to go through something like that. So I call it out these days.
Yeah.
So I went to a dinner not very long ago where this main speaker made some really inappropriate jokes about women. I didn't
Mhm.
even notice that people in the room weren't laughing, which I found interesting. And there was a lot of men
Mhm.
in the room. They just didn't find it very funny. And so at the end of the dinner, I went to him on the shoulder and said, "Can I have a word outside, please?" So I took him out.
Oh, I love this.
And he was the CEO of quite a well-known organisation. I mean, you'd know it if I said it. And I said, "I really have to tell you that I don't think what you said tonight was very appropriate." I said, "You put women down, and I think if you want your organisation to be seen in a particular way, which you said you did tonight, then that really isn't gonna help your position. It's very outdated." And, he went bright red. He literally went bright red. And he went, "Oh, I hadn't really thought about it like that." And I was very encouraged by that because I think if more of us did it politely and just called these guys out, they
Yeah.
actually would be really embarrassed. I
Yeah.
don't think he'd ever been tackled on it, ever.
Yeah.
So I
Probably
do think
because
it's
of
matter of course.
where he stands too. I mean, being
Yeah.
CEO helps, and not many people are gonna, you know, come back to him with any feedback, so to speak, right?
Yeah, especially at an after dinner thing, when he thought he was
Exactly.
being really clever and really funny. But I do think a quiet word with people, that if we all did it, we would
Mhm.
start to have more impact, I think.
Did you ever shrink yourself to fit in? And did you regret it? Because you're a very strong woman, and I imagine a lot of women do shrink to fit in, myself included, and I do regret it.
Oh, yeah, when I was young, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I first got to the city, And I was in all these male environments, absolutely, without question. I was very placating, I think, trying to keep people happy and do what they wanted me to do. And I probably didn't question enough. I got shouted at a lot back in those days. That was quite normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you look back on it and think, oh, it really wasn't very nice. I mean, clearly, I feel that my own kids need to have the same lessons. No, I don't. Uh, I think they would find the way we were brought up in business quite
Mhm.
different and quite
Oh,
shocking.
yes, and I would agree with you, and I'm glad the landscape has changed for them to a certain degree as well, if I was honest.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's so much better. And this is why I think it's so important for us to call it out if we see it, because I think the more of us that do,
That leads us nicely into Salt Whistle and your background, which says stand out from the crowd.
yeah.
I'd love for you to share with us, how do you help businesses stand out from the crowd?
Right. So at the moment, if you look at the marketplace, it's a very noisy one,
Mhm.
very noisy indeed. And I think it's really quite hard for businesses to make any kind of impact because they're all very focused on socials. And what I've noticed is that the way that marketing's changed since we were young is that we used to start with a strategy and then you used to decide where you were going to promote a campaign or whatever. So using your channels, whether that's print or magazines or TV or whatever it was. These days, people think that social media is something in itself. We're doing social media.
Yeah.
That is not marketing. That is not analyzing what your target market is, thinking about what they want. Are you fulfilling it? Are you producing the right services and products for them? That is marketing. It's really defining what it is you're doing for your target market. And just by doing little bits of social, you're never going to get heard
Mhm.
in a big crowd. But lots of the youngsters coming into marketing do not understand that strategic background because they haven't been trained in it. They're just experts in little bits. And so it's impossible to be heard because you're just never going to be heard if you're just doing the same as everybody else. So what we do is help businesses to really say something in a strategic way and get heard in lots of different places. So their whole strategy is cohesive. And the idea is that you actually win clients from it rather than it just being, somebody else saying something about, their authentic self, which is one of the things that drives me nuts. I mean, these we used to talk about being yourself, but now it's like my authentic self. The words like disrupt, that's simply good marketing that they've seen something in the marketplace that was a good idea and would change the way that product or service was done. That is what marketing is. And yet now it's got this name disruption and it is just good marketing.
That's a very
And so
interesting way actually of putting it, because you're totally right, right?
yeah, there's no such thing as disruption. It's just good, really good marketing and looking at the market and seeing where you can make a change and do something individual. And that really is where we help because we've come up with new services for people. We've looked at what they're doing and say, well, you've got all these things. Why aren't you selling them? Or
Mhm.
why don't you package that and make it a product for this market? And they sit there and go, wow, we never thought of that. And also they're spending a lot of money on things that don't really like make any difference for them.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot where people are just spending money on socials, but they're not actually doing anything for them. They're not getting any engagement and it's not bringing in any work, which is what you want the marketing to do is to help bring in new clients or new work. So by looking at where they're spending the money and we audit and make sure it's done efficiently, we
Mhm.
can actually get you heard in the marketplace because you're spending it where it counts and not on a load of stuff that you've been told you need to do, but probably doesn't actually contribute in real terms to what you're trying to achieve.
And I
It's
think
the
a lot of us, me included, we're told to do like literally everything. There'll be all social media channels, all email, and it feels like this much work that needs to be done. And nobody's ever really questioning, like, where did the majority of the leads come from? And is any of these channels worth it today?
Yes, it started with what is it you want to do? What is it you're trying to achieve? Is this the right thing to try and achieve?
Yeah.
Are you being realistic? You've got to start with that question right at the start before you do anything else. Your socials and everything, they're just channels. They're no different to the old leaflets or brochures. It's just a place to get seen,
Yeah.
to say what you want to say, but you've got to know what it is you want to say and you've got to know why you're saying it. And if you haven't got the why or the what, then there's no point in doing the rest of it. I did a talk to the MBA students at Henley Business School talking about digital marketing across Europe for SMEs. And what they were all from really big, like well-known companies that are in the digital sector.
Hmm.
And none of them understood marketing strategy. None of them.
Oh,
They were all specialists in Facebook or LinkedIn or, you know, one very particular piece of tech,
yep.
but none of them understood the strategic piece behind it, the why and the what, which I had to explain to them. And it shocked me actually. And I thought, wow, this is a real gap we have now in marketing. So it's, yeah, I think marketing's actually gone downhill a bit because of the tech in a way.
Or it's changed is maybe what I would say as well. And the strategic element that you put in is just even more important now than it has ever been, is the way I see it too. Because that strategic element can't be replaced right now. And you can't, it muddies the waters as you sort of, start going specialist, because then you only ever hear from one person who will sing and dance about their one specialism, right? And it takes somebody like you to have an overarching view and be really pragmatic about, where is it that you go now? What's the most important thing that you've learned while helping businesses grow?
The people piece, the end piece. If you can't close a sale,
Hmm.
whether that be online on your website, in person, if you don't have that closure, you're going nowhere. I think the problem with a lot of marketing people, and I say this with love, is they've never sold. So one of the things I make sure that all my guys do is sell, whether that's picking up the phone, doing cold calling, or actually selling something to a client.
Mm.
Because if you can't sell and even if they sell, I don't know, something on a market stall, I
Yeah.
don't care. It's about having that conversation with a real person where you have to adapt what you're saying to hit the place where their interest is sparked.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, you start to understand what marketing is. Okay, so Mrs. Jones wasn't interested when I said this, but she was really interested in buying that blanket when I said these things. Okay,
Mhm.
so I had to put myself in her shoes. It's not about here is a blanket that is this measurement by this measurement in blue. It's this will be wonderful for your new grandchild, Mrs. Jones. It's so warm, it's soft, it's hyperallergenic. It's understanding what's going to sell it to Mrs. Jones. And you can say this to people, but they don't always understand it. And one of the things I've seen so much of is being very like everybody else in the way that they present themselves and then just talking about their services. This is what we do for you, instead of saying, what is it that they want? How are they approaching this, my target market? And really, unless you can get your head around that, your growth won't come. It just won't come, not in the way that you want it to.
And how interesting that you say that, Rebecca, because most marketing people that I've come across will always say, "Oh, we're not sales. You know that we're not sales, right?" Yeah, I believe that everybody is a salesperson to a certain degree. I don't think you can be anywhere, whether that be in corporate or working for yourself. There has to be this element of you understand at the very least, like you said, what is the pain point of the person that you're speaking to. And if you eliminate the sales thing entirely from your head, you're missing a huge point.
Oh, absolutely. I think you miss
Yeah.
the point of marketing. If you
Mm.
cannot sell, you miss the point of marketing. And marketing has become a lot of professionals will look at marketing and think it's sort of just doing the brand. It's just making the brand pretty.
Yeah.
And a good marketeer is so much more than just making things look pretty or look nice or organizing events or sending out some nice socials. That's not what marketing is. Those are just tactics. The real marketing is understanding how you're going to get people to buy that product and what it is and who is going to buy it. And if you can't do those bits, you're not marketeers. And I'm quite ruthless about this actually. because I think there's so much misunderstanding because it's not a regulated profession. And I go places and the standards, they'll say, oh, we've got a marketing person, and they really aren't marketing. They're doing tactical implementation. And then you'll go somewhere else and you'll find an absolutely stunningly good marketeer who's really helping with the whole business, is board level, understands the finance as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to get into the finances. They don't like the numbers. But if you can't do the numbers, if you look at board level, a serious high level board will sit and look at numbers for an entire day. That is what they're doing. There's no sort of sitting just chatting about the brand and what happened. It's figures, it's delivery, and they go over and over the figures again and again and again. And that's all they're doing. So if you're really serious about joining a board, you've got to get your head around figures. There's no two ways about it. So, if you want to be a senior marketeer, you've got to know how the people on the ground are selling, and you've got to know your figures inside out and backwards. And I think those are the two bits that are really missing with a lot of people in the profession.
For anyone who would like to know more about you and your strategic brain, where can they find you?
I know my team would just laugh at me. They're so great. They're very funny. I just get beaten up daily. Yeah, no, absolutely. They're just so funny, but I just imagine their faces. They just all laugh. Well, we've got our website, so it's saltwhistle.com. There's contact details there. I'm also on LinkedIn. So go to either of those places and get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you.
And all those links will be in the show notes too. Just as we end, Rebecca, something I would love to ask you. What do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room?
Oh, you got here's like interview questions, these are. Job interview. This is because you're a recruitment consultant, isn't it? What do they say about me when I'm not in the room? I know my youngsters say I'm weird, but that's because they're my own youngsters. Yeah, I think teenagers just say that, don't they? Yeah, I'd like it if they said that I was great fun to work with and I get the job done and I'm a real help. That's what I want them to say.
And
'Cause I
that's
think
definitely what I would be saying.
oh, that's very
Yes.
nice. So I think people want someone who's gonna make the job fun to do and that's fun to work with. Everybody wants to work with someone who's fun to work with. And you just wanna know that you can rely on people to do it, and you don't have to worry. That's what people basically want.
Absolutely. Thank you for today, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. We've had a great conversation.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed and I really appreciate you having me on. It's very nice to be invited, so thank you.
If this episode supported you, share it with a woman you respect and want to lift up.
Join our free Trailblazers community, the space where high-achieving women finally feel met.
You'll find the link in the show notes.
Until next time, keep moving forward, keep listening to yourself.
And remember, you deserve support too.